Welcome back to the show. My next guest says both the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street have it wrong when it comes to figuring out what caused America's decline. Michael LeGault is the author of The Next American Revolution, How the American Government Stole the American Dream. And he says that to find the real root of America's decline, you have to look back 40 years. Good to be with you, Michael. So why 40 years?
Well, if you go back, certainly regulations and government has been growing under President Obama. But if you, in my analysis, I went back and looked at what's been happening in the regulatory area, and you find that around 1970, regulations doubled in the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, doubled in size from 50,000 pages to 100,000 pages. And this correlates very strongly with a decline in a number of significant quality of life measurables for average middle-class Americans.
All right,
so I don't think it's a coincidence.
Right. I mean, we know under President Nixon started the EPA and OSHA. Some would argue that helped the American people. The other side of the aisle would say, well, maybe not. But you know what's interesting? I've been looking through your book, and you make some really fascinating points. And one thing that I found really interesting is that there's a lot of attacks on big businesses, but it's actually small business who needs big businesses to thrive, right? And so when you have an avalanche of regulations, you're actually, you know, hurting the small business sector who has their own regulations to deal with, right?
That's correct. Well, all big businesses started out as small businesses, and the Small Business Administration has estimated that the total regulatory cost for a medium-sized company, that's a company with about 100 employees, is about $6,000 per employee. It's even higher for a small business.
Right.
So you have all of these hidden costs in starting up a business, and that's one of the reasons why people are hesitant and entrepreneurs are hesitant to start businesses.
All right, Michael,
these days.
Also you make an interesting point in your book. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, you know, the car makers, you use an example of the regulatory onslaught, but you know what? GM, as you point out, basically invented or helped work on the self-starting engine, the catalytic converter, you know, the in-car GPS system. Yeah, you know, you're right. You point out that John DeLorean, you know, had made fun of GM, calling it, you know, on a clear day you could see GM forever because of the bloat. But we do have, I'm very positive about American industry. You do have positive movements going on in various sectors of the U.S. economy that we could be optimistic about. Car makers are doing as good or better than Japan or European car makers, as you point out.
Yes, well, you can't, in my view, you can't have an economy strictly built around service and knowledge sector and technology. You have to have a manufacturing base because manufacturing creates scales of wealth, and it trickles off into the economy. You know, for instance, Twitter has been one of the highest growth tech companies in the high-tech area, and they've had growth of over 1,000%. They're San Francisco based. They employ about 300 or 400 people currently. And GM at its peak employed 500,000 hourly workers and another 100,000 salary workers,
right,
and created tons of jobs for suppliers to them, too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we know, of course, the automakers got a lot of government money in the way of government bailouts. Not saying that's good, but, you know, when there was this quote I read once. You start getting in bed with the government, you know, working with the government and letting the government into your operations. It's like sleeping with the hippopotamus. It feels so warm and cozy, but then the hippo can roll over and crush you. I mean, so that's a real danger zone, right, for any company that goes to the government for a bailout, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the irony about this bailout thing was that, in my view, the government played a direct hand in helping the demise of General Motors. And I'm not totally absolving General Motors of blame, but with the fuel economy standards continually to going up and their high labor costs, their segment of their automotive segment market was larger trucks, vans, trucks, SUVs, and the government essentially regulated them out of that business and caused, I believe, a lot of the demise for the company. A lot of problems.
Michael LeGault, author of The Next American Revolution. If you're out there and you're interested in this book and you're watching Michael right now, I urge you to buy the book. I found it fascinating, a really terrific read. Michael, always good to be with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Okay, thank you. Up